someone else.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Wow, I'm on mute,
But I'm not.
but you're not. Okay, that's how, okay.
We're live.
All righty.
I think we're ready. Mr. Fales?
All right, I'll call the Smithville Board of Aldermen work session to order and pass it off to the school board president to call their meeting to order.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Smithville R2 School District workshop with the city to order.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the school update, and you have a few items under that. The bond issue project update is first. Dr. Schutz or whoever's going to present that.
Yeah, let's see. Robert, are you logged on? Robert's getting logged on. I'll go ahead and get it started.
Do we lose you?
Connection. Hang on.
Go
All
ahead. I've unmuted. Go ahead, Todd.
So yeah, if you've been by our campus lately, you've seen all the activity with the construction. The building's coming along very nicely. It's on a budget and on time. We expect for it to be completed in the month of May. So we're looking very, very good as far as that's concerned. The ancillary projects are coming along as well. We will not begin the HVAC improvements at Horizon until this summer. So that's kind of installed. The board is talking about a potential bond issue project in April of 2023. And that would include a bus barn / maintenance facility. That would include making our campus walkable with sidewalks, and then also a competition-ready field at the middle school. Right now, we have 9 teams that utilize in the fall our current main field, as well as the band, as well as both middle school and high school PE classes. So that is some improvements that we're looking at potentially putting on the ballot in April of 2023. So that's in the discussion phases, but we offer that to the city. So, you're aware of kind of what's on the minds of the administration and the board moving forward. We want to accelerate that timeline. The bus facility is on the current master build. All of those projects are on the current master building plan. Originally, we weren't going to look at some of those until 2025. However, we're nearing the end of our contract with Coulter's, and they are not going to want to be in this business forever, and so we kind of need to look forward and to make ourselves more available for services from other vendors that might want to bid on that project. So anyway, so that's coming up, something that the city should be aware of. Robert, what else on the current bond project and future bond projects?
Yes, the current project. The current project. Current project that we're doing now with the activity center is going along really well. The weather the past couple of days hasn't helped us any, but we're still looking to get that closed in late November, early December, so that way we can work on it through the summer months. We're still looking at some sort of open house late May before school's out. That's our goal, to be able to show that off to the community and show that off to all of our patrons. And of course, we always thank everybody for their support for passing that bonding project in 2020. And so it's exciting to see it coming along. There have been a ton of supply chain issues behind the scenes, but DLR and Jay Dunn, our architect and construction managers, done a great job of coming up with unique ways to, find materials. We found materials from a canceled project that we needed for the foam roofing because that's in short supply. So with labor short supply, materials were really coming along, and it's exciting to see it on timeline because there's a lot of projects out there that aren't. So we're excited for it, and we'll be ready to go when it opens in May.
Exciting stuff. It's been interesting driving by and seeing the building go up. Any questions for Dr. Schutz or for Robert? Moving on to the COVID update.
Yeah, so I'm back on here with video. So the COVID update, as I'm sure you're aware, the board elected to implement a gating criteria that was effective yesterday. So all of our schools are in what we call the green zone. So masks are optional. I was at the high school today, and there were still a handful of students and teachers that are electing to wear the mask, but it is optional based on that gating criteria that was adopted. So really hasn't been a lot of, a lot of activity surrounding that. People are just kind of accepting what's, what the status is. And we are looking at our data on a weekly basis. And so by Wednesdays, we publish what the status will be for the next week. So tomorrow we will publish that the next week. We're also in green, so the status will not change from this week to next week. We will continue to monitor that and look at all of the criteria in that gating criteria, which also includes the evaluation of transmission in the community and things of that nature. But as we all have seen in the data from the county and the region, and really the country, this variant seems to be on the decline, which is really good news. So we'll monitor our data here, and also the quarantine data is really, really important with this particular criteria in place, because we have some kids masked and some kids not masked. So by our county guidelines, if you have kids that are masked and some kids that are not masked, then you still would need to quarantine students. So anyway, so far that's going well. We're just 2 days into it, and we hope it continues to go well.
Thank you.
On the COVID update and gating criteria.
After today, we're still on the green, you think?
We are, as the data came in today, it'll be announced tomorrow that we're green again for next week, which actually starts tomorrow or Thursday, correct.
So I saw Chuck joined. I don't know if he heard the bond update. Chuck, one of the items that they're discussing was sidewalks at the school. When's our commercial sidewalk project going to start? Is that a 23 project or 24?
I'm looking to see if Chuck will log on. And he'll correct me if I'm wrong. I believe South Commercial is 23, correct, Chuck?
And that's when we'll do the construction. It'll probably be 24 before it's done.
Okay. Just make sure
So if we run this issue in April of 23, if that passes in April of 23, that will take, minimal preparation to get that project up and going. When I say 23, I'm talking about April of 23. So that will, provide some great connectivity from the projects that have been going on commercial, with the city's efforts.
And Chuck, our new sidewalk 6 foot on the north side of the campus, right?
Robert?
6 foot on the.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Don't underscore the importance of that project, not only connecting to what the city's been doing on commercial and around our campus, but also just walking through our campus. It's not a very walkable campus. If you've spent much time here, when I walk down to Horizon, for example, I don't usually walk because I'm walking on really in the road. If I'm on the side of the street where the central office is, walking down there. So, it's really, that's really important that we accelerate that project into the April 2023, projected April 2023, if that's what the board decides to do. It's really important that we get that done as soon as we can, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's great if we can do it, get it done. And I know we've got that piece that goes into Kindred Heights too, and we've got some connectivity along 92 highway we're looking at as well. So the more we can make it walkable, the better. Any questions on the COVID update before we move on to the next item?
I have two comments, both from one perspective. As a bus driver, the school campus definitely needs sidewalks. Anyway, and then the COVID thing, masks are still required on buses, and it's a big fight right now. The last 2 days, I've gone through a whole box of masks. So I don't know what the solution is, but that's just my perspective.
Yeah, that's a federal mandate still, that masks are worn on the bus. So that's not negotiable at this point in time.
Dr. Schutz, have you guys had any voluntary information submitted from your administration or staff specific to vaccinations and the percentage of the campus that's been vaccinated?
Yeah, good question, Dan. Back in the spring, in April was the last update we had to this count. We asked for staff to voluntarily submit whether they're vaccinated or not. That's the last time that we've asked. We've just not gone there at this point in time. That's something that we may need to do soon. But we don't have a current number for you on the percentage of our staff that's currently vaccinated.
Do you guys have numbers on percentage of students?
We do have some numbers, but our head nurse has been digging into that, and there's a website you can go and get some information on people that are vaccinated that she has access to as our head nurse. I don't have that number for you this evening, but I do know that Denise Harwood, our Director of Student Services, has stated that our numbers with our staff and our students are at a greater percentage than what we're seeing in the county. So there's a pretty higher vaccination rate than what we would see in our county at this point.
Any other questions before we move on?
Actually, can I ask one other question, Dr. Schutz, with regard to masking? And you talked about the difference in quarantine. Is there a difference if a student is masked, whether or not they are quarantined following the health department guidelines?
Absolutely. There is definitely a difference. So, if you have two students that are together, let's say they're talking in the hallway or in a classroom, and they're both masked, and then a third student walks up that's not masked, and they're congregated for a period of time, 15 minutes is the call, and one of them ends up being positive, they all three have to go home. They all three are in quarantine. So if those two students then were not encountered by the third student without a mask, and one of the two students were came up positive, the other student would not have to quarantine because they were both masked, if that makes sense. So introducing a population of students that are masked and unmasked definitely creates the opportunity for additional quarantines.
So just for clarification, if one of the two, if there was just a one-on-one situation and one were masked and one was not, they'd still both be quarantined?
Both would be quarantined, correct. Yeah, thank you. Unless they're vaccinated. if you're vaccinated, then it's, and you can, if we don't already know that, and you can provide documentation that you're vaccinated, then you will not be quarantined.
Neither of
And
those.
that's all per county guidelines.
And that's mask or not?
Correct. Good questions.
Any other questions? All right, moving on to item C. This was not on the original agenda, but Mr. Blumkerd contacted me, and I think Dr. Sheets reached out to Cynthia to get this added. So who wants to kick this off?
I can introduce the topic, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cradafell, who can fill the city in on our efforts at this point and where we're headed from here. If we were to describe to you the big rocks that we're dealing with in the school district, this would be one of our big rocks. Certainly COVID is a big rock and has taken a lot of our time and effort as we manage the pandemic. But this has become a bigger and bigger rock for us as well. Our policy AC violations, and the policy AC has to do with discrimination and the like, have real, and they require that we investigate and deal with these allegations in very specific ways from a legal perspective. They've accelerated at an alarming rate that really has our attention, and we're very, very concerned about. So we have done some things strategically to evaluate where we're at and to try to change our position moving forward. And as you'll hear from Michelle, this is an issue that goes beyond the walls of our schools, and it's really a community issue that I welcome a community conversation in regard to this. And we need some help here, quite frankly. And I'll stop there. I'll turn it over to Dr. Cradafell, and she can kind of fill you in as to where we're at with this.
Thank you, Dr. Schutz. In a nutshell, in our district, we really want to create a culture of kindness where every student who walks through our doors feels welcome and safe and loved. And right now we're falling short of that. Some of our students are really struggling with being respectful of the things that make us different. And some of those, like Dr. Schutz mentioned, fall under that particular policy because those are related to protected classes based upon state and federal law. So that would be things such as race, ethnicity, country of origin, native language, sexual orientation, disability, age. Those are all things that fall under that particular policy. So we are seeing an uptick in that type of harassment, but we're also just seeing kids just not being kind to each other and an increase in bullying in general. And so we are working with an organization, POAC Succeed. And with that organization, we're working with small groups of students to help them get to know each other a little bit better so they can see that they really do have things in common. And even if there are things about me that you don't like or you don't approve of, there are still other things that become a foundation for mutual respect. Part of that program as well gives kids who witness in some of these situations some tools to use so that they feel empowered to intervene and stand up for their peers. We're doing this, we've started it at the high school and it will begin soon at the middle school. And we anticipate that we'll have additional rounds of students who will be going through some of this training. We see this as a life skill. Again, this policy in particular is based upon state and federal law. And it's not okay to be disrespectful to others because of the differences that we perceive or the real differences that we have. That's can get you expelled from college. It can get you fired from a job. And so we just want to prepare our kids with some skills to work with others, even if there are differences that we particularly don't like. I know that there are some board members with some opinions here, so I'll let them jump in if they would like.
Thank you, Dr. Catterfill and Dr. Schutz. And I think it's good to see my friends from the city. I think you all have seen this as well, that, we as a country have come to a place where we have an inability to have a conversation with someone whose opinion differs from our own, be it political or background wise. And we're struggling. And I think you have seen that as well. And so I did reach out to Mayor Boley and to several folks in the community that let's have a community conversation, because I think, frankly, our kids are modeling the behavior they're seeing from adults, and that behavior is not appropriate from a school perspective or a life perspective. And so I know we've got several folks who are interested in helping to further that conversation. And I know we've got a number of you on the line tonight, and I thank you for your willingness to be part of this conversation. And how do we proceed to move this forward?
Was there other school board members that wanted to speak? Yeah, I do appreciate that Jeff reached out to me on this, because he and I have had these conversations before. We do need to do more, and it needs to be a community conversation. And he and I both acknowledge, 2 40-year-old white guys are not the ones to be the only ones at the table at this. And this, if you look around this Zoom meeting right now, it's very representative on both boards. So I invited Reverend Rebecca, because her and I have had these conversations a few times. I know Jeff invited a few people too. We need to have this conversation as a community, and we need to figure out ways to move forward. I'll open it up to our board and staff too to weigh in.
Mayor, more than ever, we recognize this in the real estate field of making sure that we're being fair to anyone that needs housing. And we struggle with it nationally. We're getting a handle on it from the national level down to the state level. And we're talking about it a tremendous amount within the local level. And so I think it's very important that we pull in some experts outside of the board that may have some expertise on this, may have some background of where they may have experienced various things because of their race, color, sexual orientation, et cetera. So I'm glad that we are discussing it, and it needs to be front and center.
Thank you. And for those of you who haven't met Reverend Rebecca, she's here. I'd like to hear from her. And then I think, Jeff, you had some guests too that you had invited. And anyone else from the public that wants to speak, just let us know, and we'll give you some time.
It's nice to see everybody tonight. I'm Rebecca Mulford, and this is my son, Nate Mulford. He is in 8th grade. He has experienced racism in this school district, not as bad as another school district. So props to Smithville for that, but it still exists. He has been bullied for other reasons as well, in those protected areas. That topic will stay that broad for that incident. But I am also an active anti-racist in my church, in the denomination, and have worked hard to hopefully bring education to the people that I'm surrounded with. I do think it's time to do something. I can't tell you how many times in the last year I've been on a Zoom meeting to talk about what are we going to do about this race issue. And it's a lot of people that look like this. And then we talk about it 1 or 2 times and nothing ever happens. So I'm here for the school district. I support you guys and will go to bat to help whatever. And I'm here for the community as well. If you have questions, want stories, want to hear straight from him, just let me know.
Thanks for being here tonight, Nate.
I have something to say from being in the middle school. What I found is setting certain other offensive topics relating to that topic. I find with racism, it's mostly just plain people don't think before they actually think about it. Because there are people that I know that are friends with people of the same race, yet they make fun of that race. Just today, someone made a snide comment about my friend buying a book where the main character is Black and of the queer community. And I just thought, you literally are friends with two Black people. I can literally tell you their names. People just don't, they see these people and think, oh, they're my friends. That doesn't mean they're Black people, because they don't connect that those people are the same people. A lot of it's just them being not knowing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you're right. You know, we've dealing with a lot of ignorance, and we've got to overcome that. So I think most folks are aware of Jamie, and I think Jamie is on the line. I don't know, Jamie, if you want to comment on kind of the initial steps that you're taking and your thought process around this, and how maybe as a community we could work together to tackle some of these issues.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you for having me. And thumbs up if you can hear me. Am I good? Okay. Michelle said something, and POAC is an organization that I created. I grew up in Plattsburgh, Missouri, for those who don't know. So I shared I have first sessions with the students yesterday at Smithville. And I'll tell you, I was actually impressed with the conversations that were unfolding, the authenticity, the vulnerability that the students shared, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Our ultimate goal is to try to focus on humanizing these conversations so we can talk about it. Michelle said something in regards to a life skill. I retired from banking at 46 to focus on this gap that I saw in the community, not just Smithfield community, but the community at large. The Black community, the white community, there's opportunities on both sides. But I leveraged my background of sports. I played college football at Missouri Western, and I competed against Smithfield all throughout my high school career. So I know the history there, but I applaud the opportunity of taking the first step. I am about, execution. A lot of businesses talk about, we need to address this issue. We need to get out in front of it. Strategy, but very few people take the steps to execute those strategies. Eventually you have to execute. And I applaud the first steps that you guys are taking to have these conversations. And I think there's other steps that, that are needed to follow. Something Nate said in regards to the comments being made. That's the reason why we focus our efforts on emotional intelligence training as well with this concept, because, I'll use the term unconscious bias. We all have biases, but what Nate just explained was maybe an unconscious act that they didn't even realize the comments and the ways that they presented the book, but also having, two Black friends, whatever. They didn't even realize what they're doing. So our goal is to give these kids the vernacular to understand what these words mean. Words matter. I think an opportunity for the community, one, is to acknowledge that we have the problem. A lot of people sometimes, the school districts I work with, growing up in my own community of Plattsburgh, Missouri, there's challenges there as well, but acknowledging that there is a problem so we can build action plans, action steps that align with what you guys want the community to look like. The beauty of being a nonprofit, I'm a value add. I'm not trying to come into any school, community, or district saying do A, B, and C. We're going to have a conversation and you guys will self-discover on what's best for the community. You guys live there. You pay your taxes to help enhance your community. To be a value add to this conversation, I'm happy, because I think it is important to get beyond just talk. And again, my hat's off to the district for allowing us to come in, to think outside the box and how we can focus on not necessarily black or white, because that's something that I also focus this conversation should not be just black or white. It's about what we have in common. There's a lot of things in this, all of us on this call have something in common if we stop long enough to have the conversation to find what that is. And that's my ultimate goal, is to teach these kids how to have a conversation, to recognizing, there's a mantra that I'll use in my trainings is learn the 90%. Learn the 90% of those around you. The unfortunate thing is only 10% of the kids' stories, adult stories, only get told and shared. And to me, that's a discredit to the individual. So when you take time to learn the 90%, you have the opportunity maybe to start creating new allies throughout your hallways, throughout your teams, throughout your cafeterias, all those opportunity zones to build new relationships with one another. And that not only goes to the students, but I think the teachers also need to learn the 90% of your students that you're working with, because there's an assumption made. And I just did a training this afternoon down in one of the charter schools. And we talked about putting labels on people, rightfully or wrongfully, and just the dangers and the weight that people carry by putting labels. And I always share my own self, is because as a minority male, as a former college athlete, the label I always get is, it's always about my athleticism, but never about I have a double major in business. I have a master's in education. I've led the corporate sector to retire at 46. Has nothing to do with my playing career. But when you learn the 90% of me, then you can understand there's more to me than just that. So again, I applaud just being a part of the solution. One thing I will challenge you guys as a community, because this is serious for myself and those who are on this call. You have to ask yourself, how do you measure success? And if you put a pillar as to, we want to decrease the percentage of the ACE, is it called AC violations? Is that what you guys called it? If you want to decrease the percentage year over year, you can at least have some metric to see, are you moving the needle? So that's just a challenge I throw out to you guys as community leaders, school board members who are on the call, is that make this a pillar. And then you have to be the one to decide, did you win or did you lose? Because if the needle is, even if it's a 2% move to the positive, that's a big improvement from what I've heard that you guys have dealt with from the middle school throughout the high school. But I will say that the students that we worked with yesterday, and it was a great conversation, a diverse mix of students. There's a lot of kids ready for change. We just got to give it to them and let them create that image of what school should feel like 25 years later when they look backwards. They were a part of something that was, started a new trend, So to your all's credit, there are a lot of students at Smithville that are ready for this conversation. I think the leadership, the adults, they just need to support it. And you guys are doing that. So hats off to you.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate what you're doing at the schools, but make sure you get my number from Jeff so we can have the conversation on what we need to do in the city as well.
Fantastic.
It's on the website too. Everybody can get it, but I don't want you to go on a wild goose chase. Jeff can just text it to you. Any other comments?
So Dr. Cradafeld, did we describe the process that we're doing here in the schools with Jamie?
Well, since Jamie is here, I think I would let Jamie describe it because he's more intimately involved than I am, obviously. So Jamie, would you talk about the 4 sessions with the kids and maybe a little bit about who's in each group, just so they can get a picture of what's going on?
Yeah, so we focus on 4 sessions. For session 1, we identify the dangers of, placing labels on students, on each other. And then we talk about 6 stages that we all have, that we'll go through in life. But again, session 1 is really just breaking down the barriers of finding those commonalities that we have, so that we can build upon that 90% mantra, whether it be in the cafeteria. Yesterday we had freshmen all the way through seniors. They were all kind of mixed up, which was good because you had different perspectives. You know, it's funny, you know, when Nate said what he said, we had a freshman yesterday. You know, I think he was trying to be more funny than, you know, just to gauge laughter. But as the conversations unfolded, I think he realized that he had also had a learning opportunity for himself in regards to some of the choice words that have been said in the hallways or throughout the, you know, the school experience. Session 2, we talk about blind spots, identifying what those look like, you know. So again, we're giving these kids the vernacular of understanding what these words mean earlier. A lot of us on this call probably never heard of some of this terminology until we became a professional in our own right, whether it be professional development, things like that. And then session 3, we focus on allyship, you know, understanding what the word ally means, creating allies with one another, how can you become an ally, steps you can take, things you can do. And then I think session 4 is where the rubber hits the road, is that these kids get an opportunity to create the action plan. They are going to have the opportunity to talk amongst themselves and ask about what are the things that we can do differently. And it's only going to be about 3 things, no more than 3. So the ultimate goal is if we can create a healthy school environment, it's going to hopefully trickle into the adults, whether it be the teachers, their parents, which will in turn change the community as a whole. I understand history very well. I understand that there is a diverse mixture within your community because there's a lot of new families that's moved into Smithfield because some of those kids shared that. So I think there's a lot of people on the fence. I'm trying to understand, you know, why are things like this? Because that's not their expectation. But then there's a historical standpoint of where it's the mindset of others that don't want to really accept or embrace the inclusive change for others too. So, but I just think there's a lot of community players that I already know in your all's community. You know, I mentioned it the other day, Eric Craig being one, Dirk Talley being another, the Hildebrands. So there's opportunities to get people involved in this conversation. I think to your all's point, it does go into the community in regards to bringing the change and the opportunity for change, because if this is the stigma, eventually impacts the whole masses of the community of Smithfield, because no one's going to, either 2 things are going to happen. Either people are going to either move to Smithfield or move out of Smithfield. And that's what I know you guys, that's not what you want to have happen. So.
Well, and I want to be clear that Jamie's involvement with the group of high school students, and then following that, the group of middle school students is the beginning of our work here. And the Michelle is assembling a strategic planning committee, if you will, for lack of a better expression, to help guide our work moving forward. This has to be an ongoing effort, and we'll continue to keep this as a focus in the district. It's a board priority presently. It's been a board priority in the past as well. We've got a lot of work to do. You see what's taking place in school districts around us in the metro, and we know that this is it's not just a KC Metro issue. It's a nationwide issue. And but we're concerned about Smithfield. These are our people, these are our kids, and we have to focus on what's going on here on our turf. And quite frankly, what's been going on is not okay for me as the superintendent. And so working with Jamie here in this regard is our first effort, but please understand it's just the beginning. Much more has to follow. And we've talked with Jamie about professional development for our staff is another thing that we need to do. Mayor Boley talked about the people on this screen primarily are white middle-aged people. And, you know, our staff are primarily, you know, white middle-aged people. And so we're not able to provide our students with, you know, the experiences necessary to be able to embrace and accept a diverse approach to this world. And to Jamie's point and Michelle's previously, there's a big world out there that they're going to get into. And, they need to have some skills at their disposal that's going to allow them to be successful and understand people that are a little bit different than them, have a different background than them. So we've got a lot of work to do. The administration is very passionate about the work that needs to be done. And so what's been described to you is the beginning. We kind of need to take these first steps to have a better understanding of what the next steps will be.
If I may, can I make a couple of comments? A couple of positive and negatives. Last year, the city of Smithville, well, not the city of, but there was a protest for police brutality. I have been to many protests, as I consider part of my job as an activist. And this was the nicest protest that I've ever been to. It was organized by a group of young people in the community. They involved the police, and it was great what happened. But leading up to that, there was a lot of racial slurs and terrible things that were said, because I wanted to bring my son to this protest for him to experience one. And ultimately, there were too many threats of violence at that protest. It did not happen, but I made him stay home. But so there's a good and a bad there. And then I give Smithville a lot of props too, because we moved from a smaller school district to Smithville, and I was worried. I was worried about how Nate would fit in, being biracial and other things that he falls into. But so far, what we have experienced at the school district has been not nearly as bad as other school districts. They've been very supportive and understanding. And when issues did happen, they were properly reported and taken care of right away. And then I want to encourage those on the school board and teachers and administrators. My first passion for diversity happened when I was a senior in high school. I just asked that I was A+, I was an IB student. And there were 2 Black students in our little group that, whatever that word is, graduated together. And I just simply asked the question, why is there only 2 Black students in the SMART classes? And that opened a door to learn more about diversity, where I grew up in Lee Summit, where I was. But that sparked a passion for lifelong diversity, especially in the church, but also in the community. Oh, Nate has something, sorry.
This is less related directly to offenses towards minorities and more related to the fact that I feel like majority of students in middle school, and I'm guessing maybe freshmen and maybe sophomores in high school, I feel like don't get the world outside, that it exists outside of this community of school, which, to be quite honest, the construct of the school community has not changed a lot from your point of view, other than we get information faster, which doesn't really help a lot. I'm saying that we should probably focus in on showing students the world outside of school and home life.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Rebecca and Jamie. I don't want to rush the conversation. I would like to ask that Dr. Schutz and Ms. Wagner work to get together a meeting with the liaison group, which would be our school board liaisons and our city school board liaisons together, to kind of touch base on this and have a little more time to talk through this. So if we can get that on the schedule, appreciate that. I think that'd be, is that Chevalier from our side and Hartman?
That's correct, Mayor. Yep.
Okay. And then I think it's Blumker, Lamer, and Fales from the school side. So if we could pull that together, that'd be great. It'll be a open meeting just like this one. So We do have a few other agenda items to get through. Jamie, I just sent you a text with my number. You should have it, so we can follow up. I appreciate you said 3 things because Cynthia hears me all the time. I can only process 3 things at a time. So that's my number. Works for me. Moving on to the city update. Ms. Wagner, do you have the numbers or?
I do have the numbers. So as of the end of our fiscal year, which is October 31st, our residential permits are at, so on our fiscal calendar year, November 1 to December 31st, we had 54 residential permits. That compares to 55 in the same time frame last year and 39 in 2018 to 19. In our fiscal year, that same time frame for commercial permits, we had 5, and that compares to 6 last year and 5 the prior year, 2018 to 19. So we continue on a pace with continued development in the community. With regard to Marketplace, you all have seen some activity in there, and Domino's opened a week ago this past weekend. Burger King, we as staff anticipate a call for final inspection on that project within the next week or so. The dental office in the strip where Domino's is currently and still under construction. That will take, they have some significant amount of work to occur there. And at this point in time, no word on when Jimmy John's construction will actually start. So those are updates on residential and Marketplace. And if there are questions on that, I do believe Jack is on the line and can address questions that folks might have as well. Or he may have dropped off.
I can't resist. I thought Jimmy John's was freaky fast.
Freaky fast. They haven't started yet, so maybe the construction will be that quick.
I think you guys found the extra construction materials in their pile, so they have to go get some more. Got to make sure your project gets done first. Okay. Any questions on that update before we move on to economic development incentive discussion? All right. Let's move on to item number 4.
You want me to take that away then, Mayor?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Just, we included information, a memo in the packet. A lot of this is driven by the fact that over the last few years, we've had increased interest in our community, particularly as we've had growth and improvement. And the community has undertaken a strategic planning process and identified areas that we see for potential development. The comprehensive plan was updated, and there's just been an increased focus on that development in the community. Over the last few weeks, the EDC has also had a joint meeting with the Board of Aldermen to really kind of review and discuss economic development incentives that are available. As part of the comprehensive plan update, we want to look at updating our economic development incentive policy. That we have a lot of tools available in the toolbox, but as we have conversations with developers, it would be nice to be able to provide to them some feedback as to what would be appealing development within our community. What are the types of development that there would be an appetite in our community for some type of incentivization? What are non-starters there? And so really, we have outlined 3 or 4 questions at the end of this memo that we'd like some input from the Board of Education with regard to. We have a developer approach us about a project. What are those projects that would be more positively viewed by the school district in terms of potential incentivization? What are those areas where you might look at higher levels of incentivization than might exist in the marketplace? And what are some of those items that you could see as opportunities for discussion with development? And what are areas that we would prefer to stay away from? discussions that we've had with developers have been residential projects have a significant impact on our school district, and those are areas where we would not have significant discussion with regard to incentivization. But on the commercial side, there are some of those things that there probably is some potential because of the benefit. So we wanted to get some feedback from the school district with regard to kind of that tolerance for incentivization.
Yeah, so if you to kind of tie into that, if you look at our comprehensive plan and back to even Jamie's comments, and everyone on this meeting, I think knows by now that I like to get stuff done. We do have a punch list in the comp plan, and that punch list includes this item. And our EDC is sitting through some very long and grueling sessions right now on TIF and all kinds of incentives, so they fully understand what we're talking about. And we don't want another 2017 discussion on our hands that you guys get blindsided. So one of my things that I don't think we would have in the policy is any single family residential, bigger lot subdivisions would be part of those incentives, or any project under $1 million would be under those incentives, or whatever number you want to put on it. But we need some of those items for the punch list, so we can develop an actual economic development policy, and not just our policy is here's what the state has to offer. We tried starting this conversation 18 months ago, and we've had our EDC focused on it as well as part of the comp plan. So I'd like to get some hard numbers and what the tolerances are.
Hey, is there any sort of benchmark with other communities that they, sorry, let's see my face, well, half of it. What are other communities doing? I'm just wondering, it kind of makes me nervous to say, okay, we'll let commercial business A, we'll assume a 40% like we did the commons, but yet I'm really nervous to lock in a number in this policy, knowing that in 5 years, we're going to have a different administration and a different school board. And I hate to really commit to a specific number. So what do other communities do in this situation?
So we've asked that question and had our attorneys provide a lot of data, and it's all over the board. But we don't want you to say we'll only tolerate 40%. We'd rather you say we won't tolerate 100%. And that we don't want single family residential big lot subdivisions to get tax incentives. Those are guidelines we can put into a policy. If somebody comes along with a $20 million project that needs to do multiple phases and each phase is a different dollar amount and percentage, we need those guidelines to come along. We're not looking at small projects. We're looking at a pretty diverse group of projects coming through, and Mid-America Regional Council is focused on, we just met with them yesterday afternoon, and they have some housing initiatives themselves as well, especially when it comes to housing diversity. If you look at the older comp plans, Smithville was not a lot of single family homes. If you look around downtown and actually drive our downtown, there's a lot of smaller apartment complexes, duplexes, townhouses, row houses, you name it, we've got it in our downtown. And at one point, it was a large percentage of our housing stock. Now it is a small percentage of our housing stock. So, going out there and just saying it's state statute, that's what we can go out to develop with. And then every time development comes in, we have a meeting, and sometimes they get told no, and then we become the town that says no to everything. But if you look around the metro, Adams Dairy Parkway is an example they use a lot. That area right on major highways, it's all TIF'd. You look at Belton, we've all seen the growth of Belton in the last 20 years. I think they have around 17 different incentive areas. When I lived in Belton, early 2000s, it was about the size of Smithville. Do we want growth, or do we want to continue to tell developers no? That's the question we have to really answer. They're not just going to build when they can go across the border a couple miles south into Kansas City that has over $200 million in incentives every year. they'll build there. And the reality is there's a large portion of that that is in the school district's tax area, but it's not in the cities. I get that. We don't have a lot of stock and land that's available and for sale, but the stuff we do have, we have people that are approaching us and they want to build. But as you guys can tell from your building you're trying to build, it's not cheap to build. You can't get workers, and it's a tough market right now. So Dan Hartman probably knows the number off the top of his head, but last I heard is about $250 a square foot to build anything right now.
It's right around there, right around that 225 to 250 mark. And everybody's kind of holding out hope that it's going to go down. And the reality is, I don't think it's going to go down.
Yeah. So we need to come up with some sort of guidelines. I can't just continue to send Cynthia and Anna into meetings with, well, we got state statute and that's what we have, and make us an offer and we'll hope for the best.
Right. Hey, Damien, it's Ian. So I think this is so fluid and it's tough to nail down, but what would be helpful is if you and Cynthia have an overlay GIS map of commercial development where you want to drive certain key development incentives, like I want to bring in this type of commercial real estate versus this type of residential real estate, and you have target areas around that and present it to the board. So then we can look at it and say, well, what makes sense, based on their strategies and what they're trying to accomplish versus what we're wanting to support.
So the comprehensive plan defines 5 key character areas, and those key character areas all have recommended incentives that were developed over the last 16 months or so, or adopted by the board in July, June, somewhere around there. We have the data. We can definitely get that to you guys and kind of show you what those look like. But yeah, we do need to have some overlay districts. But does anyone disagree that we should not incentivize single family large lot residential? We get to that agreement.
No, I agree. That's how, I'm one vote of that board, but that's where I would lean.
Okay. One other thing that's been called out quite a bit, and I know your all's attendance numbers are down, decent amount. We've had a few developers approach us on multifamily.
Yeah, boy, there's feedback somewhere. Again, I'm speaking as one. It comes down to dollars and cents. I hear, I hear you saying, and I've heard it, that some tax dollars is better than no tax dollars, and the way that is correct. But if the development is going to bring in is the multifamily housing, and it brings in 7 kids into the district, but we're only getting a tax break or taxes for 2 kids in the district, it's costing the district money to educate those kids, and we're already operating a budget deficit. And you can't discard that, and you can't wish that away.
Well, I'd actually,
the economics has to be there to where the school still has enough money to educate those kids as the school starts losing more money each year. And that's a fine line to walk. And we can't give away 25 years worth of taxes and having 25 kids and raising the dollar figure to educate those for 25 years and not getting that revenue. That just puts the schools in a bind. And it puts the burden on the other taxpayers, and it's a snowball effect. So you just have to be careful about when we start offering those incentives that doesn't put school behind the 8 ball.
well, one of the incentives we talked about quite heavily is Chapter 100 bonds, which is sales tax, which doesn't impact your budget at all, correct?
That's assuming that there's enough sales within the city to cover the difference.
The school district doesn't collect sales tax, correct? It's not a significant portion of your budget. Chapter 100 allows them to waive sales tax on building materials. So if somebody goes and buys the lumber, local, major lumber, and then they build houses local and they don't pay the sales tax on it, that doesn't impact the district. I'd also argue that you have about 100 or so families that are doubled up, considered homeless families. And any house that's over about 2.3 students actually causes a deficit anyway, based on property cost to educate.
So Damien, I mean, to that effect, you'd be enacting a policy that you have direct control on that doesn't impact us from a revenue standpoint directly, right? Very little say. The indirect impact though is real. And it isn't something that I would say doesn't have an impact. I mean, if you're gonna substantiate a bunch of multifamily residential developments, which I don't think it's a bad thing, but and we grow our numbers and stuff. The reality is, from a taxing perspective on our end, we're not hitting our equilibrium in terms of the cost to educate one kid. So there is an indirect impact where financially it will cause challenges by huge surge of development in terms of kids entering our district. Now, to your point though, right, we have declining numbers and there's room for us to kind of go the other direction and support some of that. So I think there is a optimal point for that type of development. I just don't know what it is without it being explored.
So for example, we've got houses in almost all subdivisions that have more than one family in them, right? They pay the tax of one house. You get 6 duplexes that come in that aren't going to fit nearly as many people that pay similar tax rate, but they didn't pay the sales tax on their building materials. Is that really going to impact the district? It doesn't.
There again, that's not something directly in a policy we would even control. So I mean, your input and your request for our input it's gracious, but it's, that's an incentive you guys are directly pushing. It's not necessarily required. But in the spirit of collaboration, I think that's where I appreciate it. And I think it just gets back to, you guys clearly have a defined initiative and plan according to your comments a moment ago. Help educate us on what those are and where the alignment opportunities might be, because I'm just not familiar enough with it right now to say, yeah, man, we could go a TIF this direction, or we could get behind a sales initiative where you cut overall sales taxes and stuff like that.
So Chapter 100
doesn't require
local property tax as well, does it not?
Doesn't have to, no. The ask that we've had mostly is the sales tax. They're not. I've told multiple developers property tax is a non-starter.
Okay.
My understanding is.
Same thing with 353, right? 353 doesn't require a school board to weigh in on it, but we definitely will want to get your guys' opinion on it, right? That's what we're trying to do, is make sure we have an open line of communication here, but we also want to make sure we have some tolerances that we can present to a developer in our economic development policy. If you guys say nothing over 90%, great. I think that's a parameter that I can live with. But if we won't know until the thing's presented to us, that's kind of hard to get to a developer.
Mayor, I want to make a point that I
We've
think
shown that we have some tolerance. We don't have a lot of history because we haven't had a lot of people come to us asking for it. But I think we've shown that we do have some tolerance, especially with the communication we've had this past year over the apartment building.
Damien, I guess there still needs to be more information, at least flowing to me and some others, because I was under the impression when we speak TIFs, we are talking property tax. We're not talking property tax, and I guess there's a big part of this that's a miss from my understanding of what the ask actually is. So maybe we could start there.
So Cynthia, can we email out everybody the video link to your last week's EDC, and then the joint meeting with us and EDC that has, and then even the PowerPoint from Megan, if we can, because there's about a dozen different ways we can do things. Probably more than that, because different phases and whatnot. Our goal is to not have a significant impact on the district. We're getting the largest medical marijuana facility in the Northland and one of the biggest in the state, with no incentives other than the fact that we passed some ordinances ahead of other people and had the economic benefit for it. There are businesses that we can look at that kind of stuff for, but when it comes to Alderman Hartman can tell you, houses aren't going up fast. And that's everywhere, right? We just dropped our part of the comp plan was allowing for smaller lot frontages and auxiliary dwelling units. 5 years ago, that was never part of the conversation, right? People wanted bigger yards, and they didn't need a place for their mother-in-law to stay. And based on the comp plan survey, that's what a lot of people wanted us to talk about and allow for.
So Mayor, in interest of the fact that you've got a meeting at 7 o'clock and we do as well, we've got a liaison group that's designed to kind of deal with some of these issues. I would suggest we add this to that agenda, that maybe the group gets together soon. And we focus on trying to answer some of your questions with the recognition that, every project is different, but I think broadly, I think what you're asking for is what tools are in the quiver and what might it potentially look like when it gets pulled out, right?
Yep.
I think that's a great idea, Jeff. And I just want to reiterate, all of this is interconnected. Developers are looking at the temperature of the city and their overall feel for both the city and school board of when developers approach us. And I just want to challenge everybody to look at the macro picture of the extent of just not the development, but how that'll affect us economically within the city. And I just encourage you to kind of think about that. But yeah, I know for time's sake here, we got to keep moving along. But
and I know I'm in a unique position that, I recognize the city gets asked for a lot more incentives than the school board will ever be aware of, right? So appreciate, I think we can quickly get together and have a group do some homework on this and bring it back to the respective boards for discussion.
Sounds good. I know EDC has probably 3 or 4 more sessions, right? So we really want to get this hammered out by April, May. So I think that gives us some time. So we'll make sure we share those videos with you. Those meetings are public if you want to listen in. The last one was about an hour and a half. The joint meeting was about an hour. So you can look through that and we'll get you guys the PowerPoint. So it sounds like we already have our next steps defined. And so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from our board.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Kelly got it.
Kelly got it. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All yours, Mr. President.